Pig. This is a film starring Nicolas Cage, who is a national treasure. Literally, figuratively, Nicolas Cage is great. And in this, he's also great. Spoiler alert. He plays a man named Rob, who's seeking out the junkie assholes who kidnapped his truffle-hunting pig. It was directed by Michael Sarnoski, who I believe got the gig to make A Quiet Place 3, based largely on this film. So if you like this movie and like the directing style of it, he's probably going to bring that to A Quiet Place 3, coming out, I think, next year, I believe. So when I first started watching this, I thought it was going to be like a John Wick clone, just Nicolas Cage going around murdering people, seeking vengeance on the sort of, I guess they're kind of drug dealers, drug addicts sort of thing, who stole his pig. Luckily, that's not what this turned out to be. It's more of a slow burn revelation of who Rob was before he became this hermit in the woods. For 10 years, you sort of see at the beginning of the movie, he's sort of been out there for a decade, 10, 15 years, something like that, just living out there, collecting all these sort of truffles with his pig, and then he sort of trades these truffles slash mushrooms to this young kid, who turns out he's sort of like selling these to chefs in the Portland area. And it's more of like a slow burn revelation, like I said, of how he turned out to be out in the woods like this. As the film proceeds, it turns out Rob was this god tier chef in Portland who nobody could hold a candle to in terms of food preparation. He's sort of like the Michael Jordan to everyone else's Charles Barkley, so to speak. So you have all these amazing chefs in Portland doing all this fancy food preparation and making these incredible dishes, but then you have the Michael Jordan who just sort of was like shows them how it's really done. Like they don't even come close to him. So when Rob comes back to Portland, he starts interacting with everyone in his past to get assistance in finding his missing pig. And the film starts peeling back the layers of the onion, as it were, on who he is, who he was, why he disappeared, what makes his personality so respected by his peers, etc. Now, there is one incredible scene in this movie that takes place in a restaurant where Rob completely deconstructs the life of a chef, in which he points out that he's not really doing the thing that he loves. He wanted to run a tavern. This particular chef had worked for Rob just briefly, like 10 years prior, and Rob remembers everything about him. That's one of the cool things about Nicolas Cage's character in here, is he's got this almost like a photographic memory. At one point he mentions that he remembers every meal he's ever prepared for everybody, and that comes into play at the very end of the film in a very important way. And he sort of deconstructs this guy and says, you wanted to run a tavern, you wanted to do like sort of bar food and stuff like that, but instead you're doing this super fancy, high tier restaurant, making these stupid dishes, and it's hard to describe without seeing. But basically, this guy, this other chef, you just see his face as Nicolas Cage is telling him, just speaking the truth to this guy, and it's completely breaking him. And Cage does this with like this meticulous calm, sort of like when you lie to your dad or your grandpa, and rather than them screaming at you, they sort of give you that life stern lesson that you need. And it's a really great and powerful scene, and just sort of shows that Nicolas Cage is not just a screaming wild man internet meme. He's a great fucking actor, and he has some of the best range of anybody working today. Like I said before, national treasure. Now, this film is good. I'm not going to argue that it's bad or anything like that. I like this movie just fine. But there is a downside, and I think it's expectations. Now, everyone I knew was calling this like film of the year, need to be up Oscar quality, etc. They're slurping this movie this way to Sunday. And it's good. Don't get me wrong. I liked it. I thought it was a fine movie. Great performances, excellent cinematography, all that stuff. It's all really good. But I did not think that this was overly memorable as a film. There were certainly scenes and certain performances throughout the film that I thought were really memorable, that'll stick with me, like that aforementioned restaurant scene. But I think it just sort of meanders a bit too much for its own good. You know, there's a slow burn nature of it that needs to be there, I think, for the film to work in the way in which it's trying to work. But I would have appreciated a bit of a tighter narrative structure, personally. I think this would make a good IOU topic, actually, which is another show on this channel that you should check out every Wednesday. We just sort of talk about all kinds of interesting discussion topics, and you know, how a viewing experience is impacted positively or negatively by hearing others sort of hype it up so much. I think that crosses all genres, and I think that happened a bit to me here. I was expecting to be sort of blown away, and in the end I was kind of like, yeah, that was good. Wasn't sort of life-changing or anything like that to me. But again, in the end, Pig is a really good movie. Definitely worth checking out, if nothing else, for the interesting look into like the Portland, what would you call them, like fancy cooking sort of chef scene. There's another interesting scene here. It was like an underground fight club with Portland chefs, and you're just like, what am I watching here? It's unique and interesting how it sort of unravels how the story goes, but ultimately wasn't something that I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I have to watch this movie again. So my rating, B-.